Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Heartland Town Hall for January 13th, 2022. I'm Doug Graham. I'm Heartland's communications specialist. With me, as always, is Heartland CEO Mark Scheibe. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Yeah, glad to be here, Doug.
If you're joining us live, thank you for tuning in and taking some time out of your day to hear what we're up to. Feel free to send us a message on Facebook or leave a comment if you have a question while we're going along. Thanks as well to the folks who are watching the recording of this after the fact. This is probably the most important town hall that I've been involved in since I joined in March, because we're talking about something that affects the entire cooperative, that being new electric rates. These are some changes that we feel are really needed, and we're going to explain why here in just a little bit. Before we dive into the new rates, I did want to share just some news about one thing. Right now, we have a scholarship opportunity. If you know any sophomores or juniors that are, that look like they could be good future leaders or are looking to develop some leadership skills, send them our way. We are going to provide two students who live on our service with $500 scholarships and all expenses paid trip to lovely Topeka, Kansas for the Key Leadership Conference. It's going to be a really cool thing. We think they'll get a lot out of it. So if you do know anyone, please don't hesitate. Go ahead and send them the information. You can find it on our website, heartland-rec.com. There's also the application there to download and fill out and bring back to us. It is kind of a quick turnaround. We need applications in by February 11th to be able to review them and get all the pieces in place. So don't delay. So without further ado, let's move on to the meat and potatoes of our live stream today. We're talking about something, again, that affects the entire cooperative, which is electric rates. The reason we're talking about this right now is on January 28th at 10 a.m., we're going to have an open meeting of the membership, and the Heartland Board is going to vote on whether we adopt some new electric rates that were developed in consultation with our partner Guernsey. Before we go into this, I do want to let you know that a lot of this info you can find on our website, and you can also look at your most recent issue of the Heartbeat newsletter on the third page. It has some information about these rates as well, so you might want to refer to that. So let's get started and we'll dive into the Q&A. You ready, Mark?
I'm ready.
Okay. So I think a good question to start with is probably the most obvious. Why is Heartland looking at changing up the way that we charge for electricity?
You know, Doug, to understand that question and kind of how we start with that is really to understand how we get charged electric from our wholesale power supplier, Kansas Electric Power Co-op or KEPCO. So from the cost perspective, about 50% of the cost of wholesale power for us is actually based on the peak kilowatts used during the summer months. So those peak kilowatts is based on the number of kilowatts used for the highest 1 hour period during the entire year on all of eastern Kansas. So it's not just southeast Kansas where we're at, but west of Wichita all the way to the Missouri border, and what that system peak is. And then that affects our bills for the rest of the year. So Doug's going to put up a graphic on the screen here, and this number just kind of illustrates some numbers just for that are generalized a little bit, but at least gives you some idea of what the costs are. So if somebody's using 1 kilowatt at peak during the summer months for that 1 hour, it'll cost the co-op about $99 for the entire year for that 1 hour period. And we only charge them about 10 cents on their electric rates. So then if you look at somebody that used 5 kilowatts for their peak energy for that 1 hour during the summer months, it's about $495 that Heartland then gets charged for that 1 hour for that one member. And we only charge them about 50 cents. So then if you look at 10 kilowatts, then it's $990 in a year, and we only charge them about $1. So as you can see, our existing rate structure just isn't quite set up to handle these fluctuating prices. So we kind of make up for it by charging a flat kilowatt hour charge. And so whether it's a 1 kilowatt being used and it costs $99 during the peak of the summer, or whether it is in the middle of the night, and it's only costing us about 3 cents or so. We need to account for those fluctuations in costs from the different days to the different months, and just have that flat energy charge the way that it's been right now. And so that means that when people do control their electric usage during those summer peaks for us, they help save the cooperative money, but they're not necessarily seeing the direct benefits themselves.
So it's pretty clear then, there's kind of a lack of alignment then between what Heartland gets charged for electricity and what we charge our members. But, it's been that way for 80 some years. So that basically worked all right, didn't it? So, why the change now?
Yeah, with the technology that it was 80 years ago and how electric was actually monitored with the spinning discs on the electric meter, that's really what the best option was during that time. And if even you think about how electricity was used 80 years ago compared to how it's used today, it's pretty significantly different. One other big game changer that we have coming down the pike, literally the turnpike, I think, could be electric vehicles. And when you start thinking about electric vehicles, regardless of whether you agree with them or not, or whether you own one or whether you don't, it is a reality that we're facing, that a lot more people are going to be buying them and plugging them in at home, and they are going to be using them sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. I think the adoption rates are pretty much going to be taking off here as we go. So Doug's going to show a slide that kind of shows, or when Doug showed the slide anyway, of the power costs for the different time periods. If you think about the chargers that are put in at people's homes, it's a level 2 charger, and they use anywhere from 7 to let's see, get my numbers right, 7 to 19 kilowatts. So it costs us as a cooperative, if somebody plugs in their electric vehicle, anywhere from about $500 for that 1 hour, anywhere to even more than that, $2,000 or more if it was up to that 19 kW for that charger at their home. So imagine the cost if we had a couple of them on the system, but then really think about if we had a couple hundred more added on, and we weren't sending price signals out to have people know when to plug in their cars or when not to. So we really just want to put the cost where they belong, and we don't want to have happen is folks who don't have electric vehicles to subsidize those that do. And one of the beauties about sending price signals is that if we give people the right price signal, they'll know that it's best to charge in the middle of the night. And not only can they save the whole co-op money by not charging on peak, but they also can save themselves a lot of money by charging off peak as well. And so, again, by giving the right price signal to these members, we really want to benefit the entire co-op and not just a subclass of the members.
So we've been trying to spread the word for a while now. I think people have heard us say that timing is important, or they've read it in various Heartbeat articles. And we've had some voluntary programs in the past, like the old Peak Savers program, where we reward them for lowering their use on the peak days and things like that. But it sounds like the idea now is to take that a step further, and we're going to make the timing a core piece of how we bill.
Yeah, that's right, Doug. We're really looking at having 3 options available for our general service and heat pump members that the board will be voting on January 28th.
So, hopefully at this point, folks have a decent understanding of why we wanted to look at new rates. So now that we understand the why, let's look at the what. Let's look at what we're talking about doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug's going to start bringing up some slides on the screen here. First one is called the Peak Savers rate. So this rate, it will have one lower energy charge year round. But then in the summer months, so June, July, August, and September, there will be a new component added to the bill called the peak charge. And that peak charge will be based on how many kilowatts you're using during the 1 peak hour of the highest usage for that particular month on that peak day. So the peak day will work a lot in the way that we ran Peak Savers previously. We'll forecast the peak days for the 4 summer months so that people have a heads up on when they can save money on their bill by controlling their electric costs during the hours of 3 to 8 p.m. And then they'll be able to get texts and emails the day before to let them know that the peak days are coming. And the only way that that peak demand charge will end up on your bill is one of those peak days that got called. by the co-op. So we've had some confusion here as we posted the rates to begin with, kind of in the confusion of what is a kilowatt versus what is a kilowatt hour. And when we say that the peak charge is $2 per kilowatt, we're not saying that it costs you $2 per kilowatt hour for all of those hours, 3 to 8 p.m. during the summer months. But really, it is the 1 hour that is the highest for the called peak day that we have. So for the average residential consumer out there, we have 5.25 kilowatts is what their average peak is during the summer months. So if you take that $2 and times it by that, it is about $11 is what the peak demand charge would be for the month. And so overall, it's not going to have that much impact on the electric bill for the month. It's not like it's at $11 per hour that it'd be, but instead it's just one charge for $11 that would be on the bill.
Okay, bear with me while I get to our next slide. Okay, this is the time of use rate.
Okay, so time of use rate. This one's going to be just a little bit more simple. So as Doug has it up on the screen, you can see that it's basically one charge for 3 to 8 p.m. and then another charge for all the rest of the hours of the day. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive during that peak window, 365 days a year, and then the off-peak window, which would be all other hours of the day other than 3 to 8 p.m. Would be less. And then Doug's going to be rotating slides here to the EV time of use. So that's the time of use EV slide. So a lot like the time of use rate is most expensive from 3 to 8 p.m. Then there's an off-peak hour or off-peak time when it's a little bit cheaper. And then there's the super off-peak, which is midnight to 4 a.m. And that's pretty dirt cheap electricity there, where it's ideal for people who have electric vehicles that can program them to charge starting at about midnight and then utilize that charging window and whatnot. So really, it's intended for those people who drive about on average 30 to 40 miles a day round trip on their electric vehicle, and they can charge their electric vehicle on average by our estimates for about $150 for the entire year in that scenario. So one thing to mention about the rates for the Peak Savers plan is that the peak alerts will only be issued during those 4 summer months, so June, July, August, September, and we won't be issuing them on weekends or on holidays. And on the time use plans, those buckets are 365 days a year, so every day of the year, it'd be 3 to 8 p.m. would be that on-peak charge for the kilowatt hours.
So these are pretty big changes, compared to the standard way that we've been charging for electricity for all this time. And I'm imagining that a lot of people are wondering, okay, we've got big changes to the rates. So what happens to my actual total amount that I pay each month? Is that going to change a lot as well?
Yeah, Doug, that's a really good question. So for most of the consumer members out there, it's going to be a pretty similar monthly charge. And so the cost of service study that was formed along with our consultant Guernsey has indicated that there's a modest need for a rate increase of about 1.6%. And that will be offset by about a 2% decrease in overall power costs on the wholesale side of things by the savings of the 2 solar projects that got installed, or 2 solar farms back in 2021. So as a result, we expect the vast majority of consumer members to see little to no change on their electric bills if they choose the best plan for them. So having 3 options, obviously there might be some people who need some assistance choosing what the best rate is for them, and we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. But if it's adopted by the board, we'll no longer offer the seasonal rate, and those will be all lumped into the general service accounts. One other note for other members is that the small commercial accounts that are out there, we're looking to lower the energy charge and then increase the peak demands to $6 per kilowatt. But that will match the peak windows during the summer will then match what general service does, where it's only going to be the called peak days when that billing demand would actually be added to the bill then.
We had one question on our comments here on Facebook that I think we can just hit on real quick. The question was whether we'd still, folks would have the service availability charge on all of these new rates. And yes, it is still part of all 3 of them. It was $38. If this change is approved, it will go up $1 to $39. And then we feel like we've got it, where it needs to be to cover those fixed costs, or pretty darn close. So again, that's worked in with the energy charge and figuring figuring that overall, 1.6% average increase. And then once again, that's probably going to be offset by savings from solar on the power cost adjustment. So yes, that is still a component, but again, not much change there. One of the goals for these new rates was to give folks more control over their bills, to make them feel like they can make a difference in what they're paying and how much they're using. On these rates, what are some things that people can do to lower their bills, Mark?
Doug, it's we don't really asking people to do anything too outrageous to lower their bills. So if people did nothing, they would see about a 1.6% change on their electric bills. But really, we're just wanting to make sure that if people are able to really shift some of their usage outside of that 3 to 8 p.m. window, that's really what we're trying to get them to do.
So, to be honest, I'm a father of 5, and I think about all the things that my kids want to do, during that time period. I understand when people get nervous, like, are we asking people to turn off their TVs or computers or devices during that time? Anything like that? Or are we asking people to not cook dinner until, after 8 p.m. Or any kind of crazy changes?
Yeah, Doug, are your kids going to want to eat dinner after 8 p.m.?
I am quite certain that my oldest will hurt me if I don't feed her until.
Yeah. So pretty similar stuff in my house, and I'm sure most other people are the same way too, where we're not asking for any radical changes. Instead, we're just asking for people to be a little more conscious of when they're using electricity. So shifting some of that electric usage out of that 3 to 8 time window is really important. Doug's going to be bringing up a slide here in just a second, and that slide's going to be showing off some of the uses of electronics inside of homes. So as you can see on there, things like computers, TVs, Xboxes, video games, that type of stuff don't use a whole lot of electricity and aren't going to show a huge impact on what the savings would be on people's bills. We also don't expect people to shut off their air conditioners. We understand that if it's a peak day, it's probably 90, 100 degrees outside. So we don't want people to be shutting off their air conditioners. But if you can bump your thermostat up a couple of degrees, then that will obviously help in any savings on electricity as well. So some things to consider would be not running your electric clothes dryer, not running your electric range oven, not running your dishwasher until after 8 p.m. or cooking on the grill or even countertop appliances. I know that my family uses our air fryer a fair amount, and that uses a lot less electricity than the oven does. So plenty of ways that you can make that work during the summer peak days, or even if you're on the time use based rate, that 3 to 8 time window. And so keep in mind that we're not requiring you to do anything, but instead, if you so choose to move some of your energy usage off peak, then that's really what would work best for you, and then you'd be able to save money on your electric rates and help keep your costs down as well. And so really, we're putting more control in the members' hands. So if you want to save money on your bills, this is a great opportunity to be able to do that.
So how do we envision the changes that we're talking about affecting the folks that we have on our system who have solar systems installed?
Yeah, great question, Doug. We don't currently have any plans to move away from the net metering rates that are in place right now. And it'll work pretty much the same way as it has before, based on the monthly kilowatt hours that we've been doing previously. The biggest change, though, is that there's going to be a timing component that's going to be added for those rates that come into play. So for peak savers, the energy component, the kilowatt hours that is on the bill, is going to be the same every day of the year. And so that one's pretty easy. But then when we get to the summer peak months, that kilowatts that are consumed or produced on peak will be netted out. So if during the month or during the time period, it might go from produced to consumed. And so we're going to net those differences out over the month or over the 1 hour interval, and then be billed based on that. On the time of use based rate and on the EV time of use, the timing is really going to make the biggest difference. So from the 3 to 8 p.m., it's going to be the more expensive energy. All the rest of the hours that the sun is shining, then it'd be a little bit lower of a rate. But in summary, we don't really expect there to be too big of impact on our consumer members. There's about 75 of them or so that are on the solar rate the way that it is right now, or on that distributed generation net metering rate. And so we don't expect a whole lot of changes on those customers that are utilizing that net metering rate.
Okay. Thank you for breaking that down for us. One of the most difficult concepts out of everything that we've talked about, and I think it's going to be something that we continue to work on educating folks about in the future as we move forward with this, is kilowatts or demand versus kilowatt hours or consumption. How do you explain the difference to people?
Another great question, Doug. I think you have another slide to be showing up there on the kilowatts versus kilowatt hours. So you still have a 100 watt light bulb in your house and you haven't put up an LED or a compact fluorescent yet. Let's just use that as a good example to begin with. So that's on the very left side of the screen up there. 100 watt light bulb equals 0.1 kilowatts. So if you run that for 1 hour, that equals 0.1 kilowatt hours. If you run it for 2 hours, then it's 0.2 kilowatt hours. And if you run it for 10 hours, then you'd get all the way up to 1 kilowatt hour. So as you can see, kilowatts is more of an instantaneous use of power, and a kilowatt hour adds a timing component to it, which makes it a little bit more harder to grasp. But if you just think of it, let's move over to like the electric range picture that's up there. So if you are looking at the oven, if it is using 2 kilowatts when it is turned on, and then you use that electric range for 2 hours, it's 4 kilowatt hours of electricity. And if for some reason you had that oven turned on for 10 hours, then it would be 20 kilowatt hours. So it's 2 kilowatts, but then you look at a time component and then it turns into kilowatt hours. So for the average home that has a central air conditioning unit in it, 3-ton air conditioner is pretty common throughout the system. And that air conditioner uses about 3.5 kilowatts for an instantaneous power. So if that air conditioner is used on peak and is running for that full hour using then 3.5 kilowatt hours, that would equate to about $7 because it's also 3.5 kilowatts in that aspect. So you can see for the entire month running that air conditioner on that 1 hour is only going to be about $7 of your peak demand charge that's out there.
Okay, so we've made it through all the pieces that we wanted to hit on, at least initially. Again, I would encourage anybody who has any questions to please go ahead and throw them in the comments. Mark, thank you for going through all of that with me. For everyone watching, we know this is a lot to take in. And we're committed to helping you stay informed about this stuff and learn more and be equipped to make good decisions about how you use your electricity, how you choose to pay for it, all that kind of thing. Over the next several months, provided the Heartland Board approves these new rates, we're going to be continuing to push out new tools, new information to help everybody get a handle on this. One tool I think is going to be particularly useful is it's a rate calculator where you'll be able to punch in your account number and it will show you your usage from 2020 and 2021, and it will actually show you if you were on one of these new plans, and it'll break them all down individually. This is what it would have cost you to be on it, and then you can see which one you would have paid the least on, so that you can and see which one is actually the best for you based on your past usage. Now, keeping in mind that, of course, we encourage everybody to change some of those habits, and if they can, or if they choose to, and move some of that usage out of the peak, because now with these new rates, if you do so, you're going to be able to save some money on your bill. By default, our plan is that everybody's going to be on that peak savers rate, which is the first one that we showed that has the demand, the peak charge on it. But we're going to have an easy process in place where if you use that tool or you just like the setup of the time of use rate better, then you'll be able to switch. It'll be quick and painless as we can make it. So all of that is in the works. And then last thing, I wanted to just reiterate that even though all this, I'm sure, feels like a huge change, and it is in terms of the structure and how this is all built and put together and how it's getting us ready for the future, it's not actually that big of a change at all right now when it comes to how much you're going to pay for electricity. Your monthly bill is not really going to change hardly at all. So please don't panic. We're going to work through all of this together, and I'm confident that when we get through it, we're all going to be in a better place for all of the changes and opportunities that are coming in the future. So that is really all I think we had for a presentation tonight. I haven't seen any other questions or comments come through on the chat. So I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. And we do appreciate Sherry Davis also pointing out, as we were talking about the air conditioner, that not a whole lot of money that would be impacted. So obviously, if people have questions as they move forward, please do reach out and use the tool and just continue to ask questions, and look forward to moving to some different rates possibly out there in order to help give people the control to save money on their electric bills.
Folks, if you have any questions that you didn't feel comfortable posting on the chat here, feel free to message us on Facebook, or you can shoot an email to info@heartlandrec.com. That'll come straight to me. So we'll be able to help you with any questions that arise. So until then, thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you another time.
Thank you.